Number 10. Thor of the Thunders. Thor of the Thunders is also known as the man named Donnell, an old man who hails from the reality of Earth 311, the world often referred to as 1602, which was created by Neil Gaiman and Andy Kubert. Thor of the Thunders was the godlike form that Donnell took upon slamming his artifact, a wooden stick, to the ground. The Doom of this reality attempted to steal this magical artifact but was unable to do so, as he dismissed the stick, which Donnell then used to transform into his Thor form. Thor of this reality is believed to be the god of storms, thunder, lightning, and agriculture. His very existence is considered very controversial considering the time period and the power and beliefs belonging to the Catholic Church. Number 9. Thunderstrike. Eric Masterson might not be around in the comics anymore, but when he was around, he was pretty powerful. He became merged with Thor Odinson for a time, and at one point replaced him as Thor as well. Eric was considered worthy enough to wield Mjolnir, but is also known for his own specific weapon, which also inspires his superhero name of Thunderstrike, based on the Thunderstrike mace. Eric died before he could even fully comprehend all the power that the mace offered. One of the most powerful abilities it granted, though, in my opinion, was that of teleportation, allowing Eric to open up portals to anywhere he chose, even allowing him to travel to other dimensions, or possibly alternate realities. Trans-dimensional travel capabilities are always super OP to me, especially when they come from a time period where they weren't as clearly defined, meaning that they could basically be as limitless as the story required. Them's the best time for crazy powers. The times when we didn't have to define anything. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more like it, be sure to show us by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. ASGARDIAN. Billy Kaplan as Wiccan is definitely ramping up to be one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel multiverse, but before he was known as such, he went by a different name and style. When he was just starting out as a hero, Billy was a member of the Young Avengers, and inspired by Thor, took up the mantle of Asgardian, styling himself as such. The name didn't end up sticking, and only lasted for a few issues before he decided to change it to Wiccan in issue 6 of Young Avengers, which more suited his magic-based power set. However, it is important to note that Asgardians are known for being tied to magics as well, so while Billy was just starting out and the name didn't last long, in a way his magics do kind of tie him to the Asgardians, who are also sometimes known for being mystical. They are mystical, cosmic, and mythological, but it depends on the story as to which aspect is more highlighted. Billy, as Asgardian in this Thor Styles, is really only being ranked so low for his lesser ties to Thor, but power level wise at this point, he's pretty off the charts. Number 7. GROOT Thor. GROOT Thor is one of my favorite alternates. He appeared as one of the members of the Thor Corps on Battleworld. Other than the reality of Battleworld, we don't really know exactly where he comes from. He could even perhaps be a combination of two alternate characters for all we know. Anything is possible on the patchwork world of God Emperor Doom's Battleworld. GROOT Thor, however, possesses the combined powers of both Thor and Groot, presumably from Earth 616, which would make him pretty crazy powerful, as both of those heroes are capable of great feats. So combine their abilities and you get one strong and capable character. GROOT Thor ended up joining up with Jane Foster, who is also Thor, in the rebellion against God Emperor Doom, whom the Thor Corps originally worked for. Instead of only saying "I am Groot," he instead only speaks the phrase "I am Thor," which makes me laugh. It's great. I love Groot. He's one of my favorites. Number 6. RUNE Thor. RUNE Thor is one of the alternate Thors who appeared on Battleworld as a member of the Thor Corps. His fellow Thor ended up turning against him after they realized that RUNE Thor had turned pretty evil and was killing all the alternate Jane Fosters and Donald Blakes that he could find. RUNE Thor proved powerful enough to beat and eventually kill, as a result of his injuries, an alternate version of Beta Ray Bill, also part of the Thor Corps, who was known as Stormbreaker Ray. RUNE Thor, however, would also be taken down in the end by another member of the Thor Corps who was investigating the case involving the missing persons. The Janes, the Donalds, the missing persons. Number 5. Ultimate Thor. Thunderer Thorleaf, as he was known during his Battleworld days, was the one responsible for defeating RUNE Thor and killing him in the end. This version of Thor initially forgot who he was, and for a while in the Ultimate line, he was just a nurse by the name of Thorleif Goleman, who believed he was human. In the end, however, Thor would begin to remember Asgard, experiencing what others believed were delusions. Even readers thought he might actually be going insane, and we weren't really sure if he was really Thor or if it was all in his head, but later on it was revealed that he was in fact the real deal, the Norse god of thunder, and the real Thor in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. Thor was established as one of the most powerful characters in the entire Ultimate Universe, and even when he doesn't have his innate powers, which would later be restored to him by Odin, he has his EDI biomechanical suit to back him up, which grants him abilities and attributes similar to his godlike ones. Number 4. Goddess of Thunder. Jane Foster has been known by many different heroic mantles. One, she is a doctor, which kind of makes her like an everyday hero. That's like an everyday hero mantle. And two, she is currently a Valkyrie and was one of the last Valkyries besides, well, until the return of the Valkyries, which kind of semi-randomly happened during the King in Black event. But in between, Jane Foster was known as Thor, taking up the mantle after Thor Odinson was deemed unworthy during the original Sin event. In many ways, Jane was considered to rival Thor in power, and at times even bested him. She also took up the mantle despite having cancer in her human form, and despite the fact that transforming into Thor basically canceled out the effects of her chemo, meaning that her cancer was only getting worse and worse from her transformations. So even though it was killing her, she was like, I'm still gonna be Thor. And man, you gotta respect Jane for that. That's pretty crazy. Number 3, MCU Thor. The Thor of the Marvel Cinematic Universe became so powerful that he didn't even need to have a hammer to use his power. This is a Thor who realized the power was inside him all along in Ragnarok, and despite becoming bro Thor in Avengers Endgame due to, well, his depression surrounding losing Asgard and then being unable to defeat Thanos, still was immensely powerful throughout that film. In fact, the Russo brothers confirmed in a post on Reddit that Bro Thor was no weaker than he was previous to this state, and he remained super powerful, but he was just going through some stuff at that time. In Avengers Infinity War, Thor was able to restart the Forge at Nidavellir with the help of Rocket, doing the unthinkable and holding the iris that focuses the neutron star within the Forge open himself, which meant he himself was hit with the star's powerful energy. Thor held the iris open long enough to ensure the top of Stormbreaker at least was forged, which when you think about it and you talk about it, it's kind of weird. But when it happened in the movie, you were like, oh, that's nice. Number 2, Beta Ray Bill. Beta Ray Bill deserves a lot of respect for just how powerful he is. So powerful, in fact, that even Odin was forced to recognize him after he bested Thor in combat. This happened back when Thor, being separated from his hammer, turned him back into Donald Blake. Remember those days? While he was separated from Mjolnir, Bill managed to get his hands on Blake's cane and summon Mjolnir's power for himself, being deemed worthy to wield it. This prompted Thor and Beta Ray Bill to battle over who should possess Mjolnir, and Beta Ray Bill was actually the victor of that fight. However, despite winning, and despite the fact that the fight was to the death, he decided to actually spare Thor's life. Odin decided to acknowledge his power, seeing how great of a warrior he was, and made him his own Asgardian weapon to wield moving forward, known as Stormbringer. Also, Scuttlebutt. I just like saying the name of that ship. Scuttlebutt. It's a good name. Number 1, King Thor. One of the most powerful alternate versions of Thor, hands down, has to be the alternate future version from Earth 14412, King Thor. This isn't just because of his power as ruler of Asgard and Allfather, a power which Thor would actually rename as the Thor Force once inherited, but this version of Thor has also bonded with and wielded the all-black Necro Sword, and was also known for a time by another, more powerful name and mantle, King Phoenix. This happened after Wolverine relinquished the Phoenix Force and thereby his life to supercharge Mjolnir in helping King Thor to defeat Doom, because that's basically what he needed. He needed the Phoenix Force to do that. Never fear though, after Doom was defeated, the Phoenix Force managed to later resurrect Logan, because that's how the Phoenix Force do. So even though Logan was like, I give up my life and my power for you, Thor, he still gotta come back after.
Coming in number 10, we've got Thor L. On the surface, this is a pretty cool looking superhero. Nothing too outrageous to see here. No funky animal parts, no silly gag weapons, no ridiculous shoehorning into a larger plot that may or may not make sense. Well, that last one is contestable, but we'll ignore it for now. The thing about Thor L is that he's a fusion of two famous heroes, one of which is Thor. Can you guess who number 2 is in this combination? Well, if you thought we were strictly sticking to Marvel today, you'd be wrong. Thor L is the result of Marvel and DC's crossover comics known as amalgam comics. Crossovers are done all the time, they're part of the wicked fun that is comic books, but to have these two Goliath comic creators cross over, well, that was something wild. Superman, or Kal-El, plus Thor. What a duo! In this enormous universe-connecting event, many new heroes were born. Thor L wasn't the only crossover character created, but this is definitely new ground for both these supers involved. He's very blue this time around, thanks to the Superman here being Blue Energy Superman, and has a big ass T on his chest thanks to Thor. A very powerful creature indeed. Not a very long-lived one though, as he only shows up a few times across a couple issues. Coming at number 9, we've got Iron Hammer. Sticking with the theme of crossovers, let's take a look at one that can be associated with the most ambitious crossover event of all time. The Avengers might seem a little basic at this point, what with them being the focal point of a multi-billion-dollar film franchise that now largely controls the feature film industry, but they used to be something people got really excited for. You could hint at it unendingly and build up the hype as much as you wanted because people really wanted to see Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and the Hulk team up. Eventually they got Spider-Man in there too, phenomenal. A blast and a half, absolutely. But what happens when you quite literally cross some famous characters over? Well, you get Iron Hammer, which, very cool name by the way. He comes from the world of Infinity Warps, where Gamora messes up the universe, causing all sorts of heroes and villains to mishmash together. This results in a whole new squad of crazy characters, including Stark Odinson, the lovely sum of Iron Man and Thor. If you thought these two were strong on their own, just check this out. When Iron Hammer was first conceived, he sort of just lived his life as a human with no memory of anything else. Eventually he did realize his skill with technology and even further down the line discovered his Asgardian ancestry. The result? Iron Man with Asgardian enhanced technology. Magic and machine, together at last. Coming in at number 8, we've got Zombie Thor. Marvel zombies, what a wild ride for all involved. One would assume that a literal god might be able to resist the zombie virus and fight back, but here we are. I guess it's more of a super zombie virus after all. After a valiant fight to keep hope alive, Thor could fight no longer. The Deadite Legion were too much for him in both numbers and power, and so Thor succumbed to the virus. From there he rose up, looking for a nice snack to eat, and began his life as a zombie. Frankly, zombie Thor doesn't look all that different from regular Thor, save for a much spookier face and a nice set of chompers that we tend to focus on a little more than usual. Oh, and Mjolnir is no longer his weapon. As a zombie, he stops being worthy, which leaves him kinda feeling naked. Instead of remaining as a hammerless zombie, Thor decides to find a new one. And so he does, in the form of a bunch of scraps cobbled together from the rubble. Improvised weapons and zombies, a tale as old as time. Coming in number 7, we've got Revenger Thor. Revenger, not Avenger. And we're not talking about the Revengers from Thor Ragnarok. We'll talk about MCU stuff some other time. For now, we're diving straight into the Cancerverse, where Lovecraftian abominations rule and death has been done away with entirely. That is a weird, tough pill to swallow. Somehow, Lord Marvel has corrupted the Avengers here and made it so that they serve the many angled ones. These creatures resemble the great old ones of Lovecraftian lore and really lean into that cosmic horror angle. Very spooky, very creepy, very mind-boggling. Thor specifically gets a wild makeover, now sporting some weird tentacle protrusions out of his face and glowing red eyes to boot. Definitely not a hero that would bring relief to the face of a scared public. Coming at number 6, we've got Beta Ray Bill. This one is pretty much accidental in how it happened. A super soldier from a race known as Corbinites, Beta Ray Bill was already pretty powerful before being granted the power of Thor. When the Corbinites galaxy was destroyed, Bill was the one designated to protect their planet, and he did so quite well. A very heroic hero, of course. So when he fought Thor over the use of Mjolnir, it turned out that he was indeed worthy of that power. In doing so, he was granted the power of Thor through a weapon called Stormbreaker. Good for you, Bill. Thor. Whatever. Coming in at number 5, we've got Cyclops Thor. Mjolnir only has one eye, and now Thor does too. Sorry for that terrible joke, I just couldn't help it. Somewhere out there is a universe absolutely stuffed with Cyclops, beings only sporting one eye. Dead center on their heads, the look is an uncanny one indeed. In that very same world, all of the regular heroes we've come to know and love are around, although they're all sporting that singular optical nerve. Thor is included in this mess, and they eventually make it through some dimensional cracks to cause trouble in other realities. Powerful and weird to look at, this version of Thor is a doozy. Very strange indeed. Coming in number 4, we've got Venom Thor. The symbiote never gives up. No way, no how. In a universe where it does not attach itself to Eddie Brock, it does its best to find another suitable host. In the case of Venom Thor, it first found Spider-Man. Featured in a What If comic, this time the symbiote hijacks Peter Parker. This causes all sorts of chaos, eventually resulting in it hopping to the Hulk. And then the Jolly Green Giant eventually delivers it to Thor. This is particularly rough because this version of the alien creature doesn't recoil at the introduction of sonic energy, it just feeds off the energy of the heroes it attaches to. So for a while, Venom is born with the body and powers of an Asgardian. Yikes. Eventually, Thor is able to shake it off and defeat it, but that doesn't make up for the very strange image of a venom-colored god of thunder though. Coming in at number 3, we've got Throg. It's Thor, but he's a frog. Just look at him. Man, what a world we live in where stuff like this is just readily accessible at all times. The god of thunder in adorable amphibian form. This version of Thor pops up a couple times, once being held captive in a jar and once in a run where all the Avengers were animals. The jar frog found in the void was hinted at being a result of one of Loki's pranks on Thor. Very funny, brother, now turn me back into an Asgardian. The other Throg is a wild tale of Simon Walterson accidentally getting turned into a frog, joining an animal war, coming across a piece of Mjolnir and transforming into Thor. Throg! It's Thor, but a frog. Coming in at number 2, we've got THORR. Even less sensical to say and even more goofy, this is an outlandishly cartoonish iteration of the God of Thunder. His story stays the same, his powers remain unchanged, but now Thor is a cartoon bulldog. He's part of the Scavengers, and was born in Arfgard. Oh me, oh my. It's definitely mostly a gag character, originally appearing in an issue of the Spectacular Spider-Ham alongside Peter Porker, but Thor has been around and continues to show up. And at number 1, we've got Thorangutan. Honestly, I just wanted to say this one out loud. Like, Throg and Thor are all fun and all, but the pun action on Thorangutan is unmatched. Say it out loud while looking at this goofy little monkey and tell me you don't crack a smile. Thorangutan is a hero on an Earth ruled by intelligent apes. Ape Avengers, Ape Assemble. And with that, I'll stop.
Coming in at number 10, we've got Thor's dad himself, Odin the Allfather. Now, given that Odin is the one that put the worthiness requirement spell on Mjolnir in the first place, it kinda makes sense that he'd give himself a loophole and allow himself to be considered worthy, and is shown to be able to wield the hammer multiple times over the years. However, the most notable might be the incident that caused him to add the worthiness charm to the weapon in the first place, when Odin had first created the weapon, but found its power too great for him to control safely. Outraged and spiteful, Odin basically roared, "If I can't do it, no one can," and locked Mjolnir away until it eventually became Thor's. Talk about an overly dramatic origin story, am I right? At number 9, we've got the unbeatable Squirrel Girl, a character that honestly doesn't really need Mjolnir, but heck, I guess if she can lift it as well, then she's on the list. Squirrel Girl is a fan favorite character who exists on the sidelines of the Marvel Universe, rarely taking part in major events, but yet has somehow managed to easily defeat practically every major supervillain that's encountered her. Given how powerful she is, the only opponent who's really ever given her trouble is an evil clone of herself. When the Squirrel Girl clone had already taken out the Avengers and threatened to take over the world with a squirrel army, the original Squirrel Girl picked up the fallen Thor's hammer and used it to defeat her evil self. Coming in at number 8, we've got a worthy X-Men in the form of Rogue. Now, since comics history can be a bit convoluted, this storyline actually happened when Rogue and her power-absorbing skills were allied with the Brotherhood of Mutants, and she was a much more villainous character than she is these days. In an alternate universe what-if storyline where Rogue went even more to the dark side, Rogue was able to defeat the other Avengers by touching Thor's skin and absorbing all of his powers, including the ability to wield Mjolnir. Although eventually she would decide to use her new powers for good and save Asgard from another supervillain's schemes, it was still quite shocking to see that Rogue's mutant ability can allow her to literally wield the power of the gods. At number 7, we've got to go with the god of mischief himself, Loki. Now, there are plenty of alternate universe storylines where Loki is Odin's preferred son to Thor, or in which Loki is gifted the ability to wield Mjolnir, but one of the most interesting versions of this story actually occurred in the mainstream Marvel universe. In the Access event, during which many heroes and villains had their morals and alignments completely inverted, a newly heroic and selfless Loki had to face off against a villainous and power-hungry Thor, literally fighting on the moon against his own brother. In this battle, Loki now found himself worthy of wielding Mjolnir, even if he no longer properly felt like himself. Once everyone's alignments had returned to normal, Loki was hopeful he could still lift the hammer, but unfortunately, he's not quite earned that honor yet. Coming in at number 6, we've got the one who's potentially held the weapon the most after Thor, because she's a Thor as well. That's right, it's Jane Foster. During a time when the original Thor Odinson was no longer considered worthy of wielding Mjolnir, the hammer was abandoned on Earth's moon and sent out a telepathic signal to Jane Foster, who is currently battling breast cancer while representing Earth at the Council of Worlds on Asgard. Jane found she was capable of wielding the hammer and hid her identity as she became a new Thor to protect the 9 realms, even while still battling cancer every time she reverted to her human form. Talk about badass. At number 5, we've got a Spider-Man, but not the one you might be expecting. It's Spider-Man 2099 Miguel O'Hara. In the far future, at the end of the Marvel 2099 universe, after the planet Earth's destruction, the former Spider-Man of the future is gifted Mjolnir by a resurrected Steve Rogers and is shocked to discover he's capable of lifting the hammer. Instead of becoming a new version of Thor, Miguel uses the immortality that Mjolnir grants him to become a wise leader for humanity, bringing them back from the capitalistic brink that destroyed their planet in the first place. And by finding a creative way to save the world instead of the usual punching things back to normal, that's pretty freaking worthy, Miguel. Nice going. Coming in at number 4, no Mjolnir-themed list is complete without the beloved Beta Ray Bill. A Corbinite from the Burning Galaxy, Bill originally met Thor when his ship was picked up entering the Milky Way galaxy by S.H.I.E.L.D., and Nick Fury asked Thor to check it out. After being briefly knocked unconscious and separated from Mjolnir, Thor was astonished to wake up to Bill wielding Mjolnir and all of his powers, a worthy protector of his people, simply trying to defend some refugees. While eventually Thor would reclaim the original Mjolnir, Beta Ray Bill had such a big impact on the Marvel Universe and had utilized the hammer so well that he was gifted a replacement weapon known as Stormbreaker, made from the very same metal as Mjolnir in honor of his service. Good job, Beta Ray Bill. I really hope you show up in the MCU someday. At number 3, we've got a little bit of a plot twist with GWENPOOL. One of the weirder characters from the entire Marvel universe, which is honestly saying a lot, Gwendolyn Poole is originally from an alternate reality that just might be our own, before somehow getting sucked into the main Marvel universe through a comic book and all of the fourth wall breaking knowledge that allows. Gwenpool's adventures are far more comedic and outlandish than most tales involving Mjolnir, so it makes sense that her utilization of the weapon might be a bit eccentric. Whenever Gwen used her fourth wall breaking powers to gain allies and weaponry from the Marvel's universe's past, she was able to break Mjolnir's worthiness rule by literally wearing the severed arm of Thor as a glove to wield the hammer with. I don't think that's exactly what Odin had in mind when he came up with the rules, but I guess it worked? Coming in at number 2, it's the Star-Spangled Man himself, Captain America. I remember waiting the entirety of the MCU to see Steve Rogers wield Mjolnir, and when it finally came, fans around the world were not disappointed to see one of the most iconic comic book moments ever play out on screen, and for good reason. When the Avengers are being attacked by the dark Egyptian god of death, Set, Captain America seems overwhelmed with the rest of the Avengers by the sheer amount of minions at Set's disposal. However, Steve's random attempt to grab at Mjolnir surprises him with the knowledge that he is worthy, and goes to show just how powerful Captain America can become. And in our top spot, we've got a surprise from an entirely different universe. It's Wonder Woman. During a massive crossover event called, fittingly enough, DC vs. Marvel, Mjolnir is blasted out of Thor's hands when he wins a battle against the hero Shazam. The weapon is then picked up by Wonder Woman after she reads the description, enhancing her already incredible powers and giving them a lightning-based kick. In fact, Diana was so honorable and worthy of Mjolnir that she immediately gave the weapon up, stating that it wasn't fair for her to continue fighting with such an increased power boost. And while the actual Thor might not be quite as noble when it comes to battles, him and Wonder Woman shared a smile when she handed the hammer back. I guess game recognizes game, God recognizes God.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Old King Thor. Coming from Earth 14412, Old King Thor refers to himself as an older version of our Earth 616 Thor. So much so that if our Earth's Thor dies, he will also not exist anymore at all. Love it, we love future stress. Making his debut in Thor God of Thunder issue 1 in 2012, and this version is a creator version of the god. It's fun. In the future, Thor becomes a bit hasty. It shows a lot of his true potential, especially when he creates humans for this new Earth, named Steve and Jane. Classic human names. After defeating Gore, he and his granddaughters began to rebuild this new world, starting with plant life. I feel like we're gearing up to see King Thor in the MCU. I mean, the eye patch, his weight gain, this emotional trauma, he really seems like he's going through it lately. King Thor also possesses the power of the Odin Force, which is also known as the power of the Allfather, and when wielded by Thor, of course, is called the Thor Force, or the Force. Yeah, it doesn't work. We give it a shot, we try our best. This power allows Thor to become invincible and seems to allow them to rival the powers of the strongest beings in the universe. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal. Here's the kicker though, if it's overused, it forces the user to enter a deep sleep to recover, and of course, making them vulnerable while doing so. I feel like this can be the plot for Thor Love and Thunder. I mean, maybe Thor has to use this power right off the hop of the film, then he enters a deep sleep, and then bam, that's where Jane Foster comes in to protect the Sleeping Beauty himself. There you go. And before we make our way to number 9, guys, if you could go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be just splendid, because it goes a long way for us here at the studio. You guys rock. Thank you. Now back to some more God stuff. Number 9, Zombie Thor. We all know Chris Hemsworth's diet is insane in order to maintain the God of Thunder's physique. He has like 15 abs. I'm sure it's not easy, but when it comes to appetite, Marvel's Zombies doesn't hold back. Making his nasty debut in Marvel Zombies Army of Darkness in issue 1, it was a brief appearance, as you expect with the city plagued by a zombie contagion. And as far as the hammer's commitment goes, once Ultimate Reed Richards enters the chat, Thor couldn't wield Mjolnir anymore, so instead he makes a makeshift hammer. This one made of a pipe and a cinder block. Nice. It didn't last long though because, Silver Surfer's face kind of got in the way. Ouch. Number 8, Thor. Thor, but with an extra R, a little extra spice in this one, that's for sure. So Thor, this is the evil Thor of Earth 83292. So he's a bit of a dick this time around. Fair. He kills people if he believes that they don't worship him enough. I mean, a little much. Thor. We'll do Thor's Day from now on. Is that fine? What if we do that? Is that cool? This version is pretty dark, but I'm a fan. I mean, he really loves pies. Check it out. His journey begins in Avengers Volume 5, Issue 25. Like I said, this version's evil. He's a villain, but I have to throw him on this list because he's too badass to ignore. Sorry, not sorry. Venom Thor. Okay, this next one is absolutely insane, as you would imagine. We would stand no chance against this one. Earth 1089 is home to Venom Thor, and he made his debut back in What If Volume 2, Issue 4. Issue Thor? Issue 4. I see you, Marvel. So after killing its previous host, of course Spider-Man, the Venom symbiote made its way to Thor. Very scary. It didn't last long. Thank you, God it didn't last long. Well, rather thanks to Black Bolt for intervening. That would have been messy. The symbiote with the hammer and cape, I mean, I gotta tell you, something about it I like. I don't know. He even has the flow too, the Venom flow. It looks wet, it looks nice, it looks ready to go. Venom Thor is real mighty with a hint of fright. He takes care of Johnny Storm, bam, super quick, and then when Captain Marvel attempts to level him, the hammer just absorbs her power and shoots her back away. If only Black Bolt didn't get in the way, it probably would have been a pretty spectacular light show. Gory, but spectacular nonetheless. Throg. The Frog of Thunder. Why, of course, everyone knows him. Simon Walterson made his comic book debut in Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers issue 1, and this version is quite noteworthy. He started off the usual way a Frog of Thunder starts, you know, a college football star at Mississippi State University. Maybe it doesn't start all the same, I don't know. After being drafted, of course, a knee injury left him unable to play anymore. Classic. And as if things couldn't get worse, he lost his wife, and then after battling depression, decided to take his pain to a witch, who connected him to the afterlife. He was able to communicate with his wife, how sweet. And then he wasn't able to pay the witch afterwards, which is not that sweet. Dine and dash on a witch? Dude, you're crazy. So the witch decides to get a little payback and turns Simon into a frog. He was soon given the name Puddle Gulp after meeting the other frogs on New York. Also, no, I'm not joking, this is all real. He comes across a small piece of Mjolnir, and then there you have it. The Frog of Thunder has risen. If you haven't seen any of Throg, it's quite riveting. I mean, riveting. Is that a Witchneer? Huh? Ultimate Thor. Starting with Ultimates issue 4, we see the Earth 1610 version begin his life on Earth in a not so pleasant way. So while exiled on Earth, he really did believe he was human. More specifically, a psychiatric nurse named Thorleif Gullman. Honestly, I feel like that name is more badass than Thor Odinson. It's kinda close. So around his 30th birthday, Thorleif began having these delusions of this Asgard place, and then he soon met his half-brother Gunnar. He introduced him to a project called the Dome. So basically in Brussels, they were trying to recreate this super soldier serum yet again, but this time they went with a magic belt of sorts. So instead of trying the whole biomechanical route, you know? The test subject, of course, being Thorleif Gullman. Gullman and Sachs. Can't include that. So he was given this badass Thor outfit, and the look was finally complete. He started these rants up again, how he was the Norse god of thunder. And after a neat MRI scan from Professor James Braddock, it was discovered that Thor wasn't making any of this up. These were memories. Their memories are real. I like this version of Thor. He doesn't agree to join the Ultimates after Fury asks until the foreign aid budget was doubled. My man negotiating. We'd love to see it. Also, Thor's magic belt was mentioned in Spider-Man Homecoming. Could this be a hint that we're gonna get some sort of crazy Thor outfit in the future? Yeah, probably. They like to do that. THORR. If you're a dog person, this next one is gonna make your day, as it made mine. THORR making his first appearance, or occurrence, nah, it's cats, damn it, in Peter Porker, The Spectacular Spider-Ham issue 5. THORR is by far the cutest version of Thor. Sorry Hemsworth, you're a close second. Making his home on Arfgard, of course, he's the Dog of Thunder instead of God of Thunder. Yeah, we reversed the word. See what I did? Yeah, you got it. What's a super dog without a super pack? When it came time to taking down Dr. Octopus of Earth 50810, THORR joined the other Scavengers. Yeah, see, now you know what we're doing here. You know what it's all about. He was joined by the oh-so-loving Captain Americat, Quacksilver, and Ant. Cool. Look, we got Spider-Ham John Mulaney edition, so to say we'll see Thor on the big screen, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. We're not gonna see it, that's for sure. I'll make it myself if I have to. Let's go. It's only a matter of time. I believe. Jane Foster. I'm super excited that Taika Waititi is returning for Thor Love and Thunder. Thor Ragnarok was one of the most fun Marvel movies that they put out there. Easy, hands down. So when they announced that Natalie Portman was returning to wield the hammer in the upcoming sequel, I was jazzed. I'm so excited to see what they do with this. I mean, once Thor becomes unworthy, Jane takes over. I mean, she's pretty close to him. She's probably got the swing down at this point, right? The tough part about her is that the more she uses the hammer and possess the powers of Thor, the worse her cancer gets. I really hope this part doesn't make it into the flick, because I feel like I would just come out depressed. So during the comic Original Sin, Nick Fury obtains the Watcher's Eye, which is a real neat tool, and he whispers in Thor's ear that Gore was right. Gore was right, by the way. So Gore, this guy, he thinks that gods cause more trouble than anything, and they're like the worst ever. It makes Thor drop his hammer, seeing as he believes that gods are not worthy. And then he's like, by the way, he's right, y'all ain't worthy. Oops. So while Thor uses Yarngord instead, which is awesome name for anything, Mjolnir needs a new helping hand, literally, and who other is worthy than Jane Foster. Now while the cancer setback is absolutely awful, Jane doesn't let it interfere with her duty, and at one point her and Freya go against Odin, Kolborsen, Frost Giants, Loki, Dark Elves. Like, she doesn't just pick up the hammer, use it a little bit, and then gets on her way. No, she's committed. Committed to the bit. Storm Thor. From Earth 904, we find in the What If the X-Men Had Stayed in Asgard series, this beautiful combination of Storm and Thor. Storm. Yeah, I'll always try. And let me tell you, there's a lot of lightning in this one. So after a few X-Men decide to stay on Asgard, Thor at this point is still trapped as a frog back on Earth. Classic Loki, making people frogs. Loki actually created another mythical hammer and gave it to Storm. Now she did a pretty bang up job considering that when Thor returned, he let her become the queen of Asgard. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. Her powers alone, before getting a magical hammer, she should be running the show regardless. Let's go. And finally, number 1, Beta Ray Bill. I really think we'll get to see this one on the big screen very, very soon. It's been teased numerous times now, but who is Beta Ray Bill exactly? Why is he always the talk of the town? The main 616 universe is home to the Corbinites, and amongst them is the powerful Beta Ray Bill. Making his first appearance back in 1983 in Thor issue 337, this version of Thor is recognized widely by his hammer, and that it's actually Stormbreaker, which we finally got to see in Infinity War for the first time. It was epic, the whole arm thing with Groot. So good. I stood up. I literally stood up. Bill was the first character to lift Mjolnir besides Thor or Odin. He's a big deal. Odin actually made Thor and Beta Ray Bill fight, and after Beta Ray Bill won, he refused to kill Thor. Questioning Odin in the rules of the hammer, he asked if he can use the hammer later on in life, you know, after he's gained wisdom and all that nice stuff. So Odin gives him his own hammer, Stormbreaker. Not a bad gift. This guy is awesome. He's a total badass. Christian Bale is rumored to play him in the MCU, so he kind of has to be a little bit of a badass, you know? If there's a Beta Ray, is there an Alpha Ray? Yes. He actually tried to replace him at one point as the race's guardian. He is in the main continuity of Thor, so to not see him in any movies at this point is just annoying.